The last echoes of the concert still lingered throughout Goyang Stadium long after the final fireworks had disappeared into the night sky. The cheers of thousands of fans slowly faded into distant memories as staff members moved through backstage hallways, collecting equipment and preparing for the next destination. The dazzling energy that had filled the stage only moments before had softened into exhaustion and relief. Taehyung sat quietly in front of the mirror in the dressing room, a towel draped around his shoulders as he stared at his reflection. His makeup had only been partially removed, and although his lips carried the trace of a smile, his eyes revealed the fatigue that came after giving everything to a performance. Jungkook appeared at the doorway with 2 bottled drinks in one hand and a small box of snacks in the other. His hair was slightly damp from a quick shower, and despite the tiredness in his posture, his expression brightened. The moment he noticed Taehyung sitting alone. "You skipped dinner again, didn't you?" he asked with a knowing look. Taehyung blinked before looking away, already caught. "I was going to eat later," he replied. Though neither of them believed it. Jungkook placed the snacks on the table and pulled a chair closer. "You always say that. Then you forget because you're busy thinking about everything at once." Taehyung let out a quiet laugh. "You make me sound complicated." Jungkook shrugged. "You are complicated. But I've known you long enough to understand it." The simple statement settled comfortably between them. Outside the room, staff members hurried through schedules and preparations, but inside, time seemed to slow. Taehyung opened the snack box and looked down at the familiar foods Jungkook had chosen. "You remembered these?" he asked. Jungkook raised an eyebrow. "Of course. You act surprised every single time I pay attention." They spoke about the concert, replaying moments that had already become cherished memories. Taehyung admitted that he had been nervous before stepping onto the stage despite years of experience. Jungkook immediately responded that he had noticed the small habit Taehyung always had whenever anxiety crept in. "You twist your ring without realizing it," he said. Taehyung stared at him in disbelief before laughing. "That's honestly terrifying." Jungkook laughed too. "Then don't ask how I know your coffee order, your favorite playlists, and the songs you listen to when you can't sleep." Taehyung shook his head with a smile. "You really notice everything." Jungkook's voice softened. "The people important to me are worth noticing." A comfortable silence followed as they finished eating. Beyond the dressing room walls, the excitement of the evening had already transformed into routine cleanup, but for them, it felt as though they had stepped outside of time. Taehyung looked toward the mirror once more before speaking quietly. "Do you think people understand how quickly nights like this pass?" Jungkook leaned back in his chair. "Probably not. When you're standing on stage, it feels endless. Then suddenly, it's over." Taehyung nodded. "Sometimes I wish I could freeze certain moments." Jungkook smiled. "Then remember them. That's what matters." Later, the two wandered through quieter sections of the stadium. The seats that had once been filled with thousands of glowing light sticks now stood empty beneath the dim arena lights. Taehyung rested his hands on the railing as he looked across the vast space. "It's strange," he whispered. "A few hours ago, it was so loud." Jungkook stood beside him. "And now it's quiet." Taehyung glanced at him. "Do you ever miss the noise?" Jungkook thought for a moment before answering. "Sometimes. But I think these moments are important too. They remind us why we started." Taehyung smiled as memories flooded back. Years of practice rooms, shared meals, nervous debuts, mistakes that became inside jokes. And victories that once felt impossible. They had grown not only as performers but as individuals learning to navigate pressure, expectations, and constant change. Through all of it, familiar faces remained sources of comfort. "Thank you for staying," Taehyung said quietly. Jungkook looked genuinely confused. "Where else would I go?" The answer came so naturally that Taehyung couldn't help laughing. There were no dramatic speeches. No grand declarations, only the steady reassurance found in small acts of loyalty. Waiting after rehearsals, checking whether someone had eaten, noticing silent worries. And standing beside each other when the world became overwhelming. As the lights throughout Goyang Stadium gradually dimmed one by one, the city beyond continued its restless rhythm beneath the night sky. Tomorrow would bring new schedules, new stages, and new responsibilities. Headlines would be written, fans would share memories from the concert, and life would continue moving forward. In that fleeting stretch of time after the performance had ended, two exhausted performers found comfort in laughter, quiet conversations, and the simple understanding built through years of shared experiences. Some moments were not extraordinary because of dramatic events or hidden secrets. Sometimes, their true beauty existed in the ordinary, the kindness of remembering, the comfort of staying. In the silent promise that no matter how chaotic the world became, familiar companionship would always feel like home. The cool night air drifted through the nearly empty corridors of Goyang Stadium A.S. Taehyung and Jungkook slowly made their way back from the viewing area overlooking the seats. Their footsteps echoed softly against the polished floors, a stark contrast to the deafening screams T had shaken the venue only hours earlier. It was always like this after concerts. The excitement faded, the lights dimmed, and reality quietly returned. Yet somehow, these late-night moments had become some of the most meaningful parts of their lives. Without the cameras, choreography, and expectations, they were simply themselves. Taehyung glanced at Jungkook as they walked side by side. Do you remember the first time we performed in front of a crowd this big? He asked. Jungkook immediately groaned, covering his face with one hand. Please don't bring that up. Taehyung laughed at the reaction. You looked terrified. Jungkook pointed at him accusingly. And you were pretending not to be nervous. You kept acting cool until you almost walked into the wrong stage entrance. Taehyung's eyes widened. I did not. You absolutely did, Jungkook replied, trying not to laugh. The staff member had to pull you back before you disappeared. Taehyung shook his head in embarrassment before bursting into laughter. Why do you remember every embarrassing thing I've ever done? Jungkook shrugged. Because they're funny. Their laughter echoed down the hallway, drawing curious looks from a few passing staff members who smiled at the familiar sight. After years of working together, everyone had grown used to their playful teasing. The exhaustion from the concert still weighed heavily on their bodies. But laughter made it easier to carry. Taehyung stretched his arms above his head before letting out a long sigh. I'm really tired, he admitted. Jungkook nodded immediately. Me too. My legs feel like they're going to stop working at any moment. Then why are we still awake? Taehyung asked. Jungkook thought about it for a second before smiling. Because nights like this are hard to let go of. They eventually found themselves back inside the dressing room, where most of the chaos had settled. The racks of costumes stood neatly arranged, makeup kits had been packed away, and only a few staff members remained. Taehyung dropped onto the couch with a dramatic groan. Jungkook sat nearby, scrolling absent-mindedly through photos from the concert on his phone. Every image captured a different emotion: excitement, determination, gratitude, joy. One particular picture caught Jungkook's attention. It showed the two of them laughing during a brief pause on stage, completely unaware that the moment had been captured. Jungkook turned the phone toward Taehyung. Look at this. Taehyung leaned closer before smiling softly. I don't even remember what we were laughing about. Probably something stupid, Jungkook replied. Most likely, Taehyung agreed. Yet he continued staring at the photo. There was something comforting about seeing genuine happiness frozen in time. So much of their lives moved too quickly to fully process. Days blended into rehearsals, flights, interviews, and performances. Looking back at moments like these reminded them to appreciate how far they had come. You know, Taehyung said quietly, there were times when I wondered if we'd ever reach this point. Jungkook lowered the phone. I know. Back then, everything felt uncertain. Taehyung looked down at his hands. We were young. We didn't know what would happen. Jungkook's expression softened. But we kept going. Taehyung nodded. Even when things were difficult. Especially then, Jungkook corrected gently. Silence settled over the room once again, but it wasn't heavy. It felt reflective. Outside, the city lights shimmered beyond the stadium walls, and somewhere in the distance, cars moved along endless roads carrying people home after an unforgettable night. Taehyung leaned back against the couch cushions. Do you think we'll still remember nights like this years from now? Jungkook didn't hesitate. Of course, even the small moments. Jungkook looked at him with certainty. Especially the small moments. Taehyung smiled at the answer. The grand performances and roaring crowds were unforgettable. But there was another collection of memories he treasured just as much. Shared meals after exhausting schedules, conversations that lasted until sunrise, inside jokes no one else understood. Encouraging words exchanged before stepping on stage, and the quiet reassurance of knowing someone was there without needing to ask. A sudden yawn interrupted the peaceful atmosphere. Jungkook blinked before rubbing his eyes. Taehyung immediately laughed. "You were trying so hard to look cool just now." Jungkook frowned. "I am cool." Another yawn escaped before he could finish the sentence. Taehyung doubled over with laughter. "You look like you're about to fall asleep sitting up." Jungkook pointed at him. "I blame you." "Why?" "Because you kept talking about emotional things." Taehyung grinned mischievously. "You don't like emotional things." Jungkook hesitated. "I didn't say that." Then, Jungkook looked away for a moment before answering honestly. "I just don't always know how to say them." Taehyung's smile softened. "You don't have to." Jungkook glanced back at him. "You understand anyway." Taehyung nodded. "I do." The simplicity of that exchange carried years of trust within it. Not every feeling required perfect words. Sometimes understanding existed in shared experiences, familiar habits, and silent support. After spending so much